Okay, everyone, we're about to get started. If you can silence your cell phones like I'm doing. Appreciate it. Okay. Good morning, everyone. We are on the record. Today is Monday, the 24th day of July in the year 2023. This is a special meeting of the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 10 a.m. start. The clock on my cell phone is showing 10:12 a.m. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this meeting? Councilperson Ridley. Councilperson Prinzary. Councilperson Baggiano is not here. Councilperson Saleh.
Here.
Councilperson Solomon. Councilperson Gilmore.
Present.
Councilperson DeGise is not here. Councilperson Rivera is not here. And Council President Waterman.
Here.
We have 6 council members present at 10:12 a.m. Can we kindly rise for a moment of silence, please? I'd like to dedicate this moment of silence to Kenneth Thompson, employee of the Department of Public Works. Thank you very much. On behalf of Council President Waterman and the members of the Municipal Council, in accordance with the New Jersey Public Laws of 1975, Chapter 231, the Open Public Meetings Act, also known as the Sunshine Law, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the posting on the bulletin board of the first floor City Hall. The annual notice, which is the schedule of meetings and caucuses of the Municipal Council for the calendar year 2023, and filed in the office of the City Clerk on Thursday, December 15th, 2022. In addition, at its time of its preparation, the agenda of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Friday, July 14th, 2023 at 5:50 p.m. and again on Friday, July 21st, 2023 at 12 p.m. to the Mayor, Municipal Council, Business Administrator, Corporation Council, and the local newspapers, and posted on the city's website, so I can certify as to our total compliance with the Sunshine Law. Council President, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
I know this is a special meeting and the special meeting is for the budget. When I walked in the room, I was told about the cannabis. Also, there's discussion about the cannabis, but I was informed that because the only thing that was advertised was concerning the budget, then if there's some way you can kind of connect the cannabis to the budget, then it can be discussed. All right? That's what I was just told. So now y'all have to figure that out in about 5 minutes. For real, this makes no sense to me. Every time I walk in here, they tell me something different. At this time, I'm just a little frustrated. So, are we going to talk about the budget?
Council President, so to clarify, because you sound a little bit muffled, we're talking about the budget.
Correct.
Department of Finance requested today's special meeting, and you want to have an additional.
I didn't want to have anything. I was told that there was a separate discussion concerning the cannabis ordinance that they amend. Okay. What was advertised was only the budget.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay. So, and I see that they have Matt here to discuss this. And so the only way this can be discussed, if it ties into this budget somehow. If it do not, it cannot be discussed because it was not advertised.
Okay. All right, Council President. So I asked that can I give me a couple minutes to defer with.
It
Matt?
doesn't fit this budget, so we really shouldn't discuss it.
All right, Council President, I defer to you. But
Okay.
if you want me to speak to them, considering this meeting was called by the Department of Finance to adopt the budget, and you'd like to tie in the two, if you give me a couple minutes to discuss it with them, I will give you a clear answer.
Go ahead,
Just to-
because I'm getting this news now,
Right, and,
and that's
if I
part
can-
of my problem.
Right, if I can just clarify, we, at last council meeting, the two cannabis ordinances were added as a late item, preventing the normal discussion during council caucus, right? We should have discussed them all in caucus, but because these are major changes, we don't want to wait until the caucus in August to pass them at second reading. But we also added them as late items because we had all made commitments that they were going to come to the July meeting. So there's an obvious error in getting them onto the agenda. Be great to know how that happened. Then I made the request at the July meeting saying, look, we should have a public discussion of these ordinances so we can get our questions answered. That's sooner than 48 hours before second reading. I said, we're meeting today. At the time, the BDS administrator said, yes, we'll do that at the council meeting, but obviously it wasn't properly noticed. It wasn't
Correct.
properly advertised. So, obviously as a city council, we shouldn't be voting on a major ordinance without having a
Correct.
conversation about it. So, obviously there seems to be about 8 screw ups to get us to this place
Thank you.
that makes the council's job harder.
Yes, it does. And
Yeah.
at this point, the council is getting frustrated with just getting wrong information.
I
It makes
think
our
it's-
job difficult, and we have difficult and crucial decisions to make for the residents. And at this point, because information is not given to the council correctly, we shouldn't vote on it.
I've taken the step, I circulated a memo to the.
This morning, half of us didn't even read it yet. That's the problem. We walking into a meeting, we receiving emails, which makes no sense. You don't have time to read all the emails. Honestly, you don't, because your mind is focused on what was prepared for you to vote on. Now we received the memo. It's just this morning. It's just this morning. And they just print out a copy of me to me right now for the memo that was received this morning. So that's the problem. You can't make good decisions just at the last minute. This have to stop. So we're here for what? The budget. As far as the cannabis, then we can't even vote on that next time around because there's no discussion. You can't give the council the cannabis ordinance as a late item and there's no discussion. Our corporate counsel is here. That's who we really looking at because this is where we get our advice from.
Council President, I can advise that the ordinance was uploaded in a timely fashion. It was provided to the council. It was provided on the platform. For whatever reason, it was not included with the agenda on the last meeting. I can't.
So the council still didn't get it though, and that's why they had to add it, even though it was uploaded, but we didn't receive it, right?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
it was not on the normal published agenda for the last meeting. It was a late addition on the day of the meeting. It will still be subject to obviously the caucus discussion and public comment at the August council meeting. And obviously we circulated the memorandum. We are able and willing to answer questions on anything related to that prior to the first reading. And obviously the council has the authority, discretion to defer to table the ordinance if they believe that further discussion and changes are necessary or warranted.
Yeah. We need further discussion when it comes to the cannabis. It's a lot, right? We need more discussion on that. We definitely do. So that will not come forth on the next agenda. We're gonna need discussion when it comes to the cannabis. I'm sorry that, Matt and them came. I'm sorry you guys came, but I'm letting the public know this is what we have to deal with sometime. And so at this point, I'm just like, we just have to stop it. We just can't. We can't be voting on things, just giving it to us last minute. It's crucial decisions we have to make here.
I would suggest then that everyone be ready to discuss at the August caucus meeting, that all the necessary people be requested to be here to answer those questions. If there are any questions, obviously, in the meantime, I think all the necessary city officers can answer those. And then subsequent to that, if the council does feel that they need to have further discussions and
Yeah.
revisions, then obviously that is obviously that, it needs to be a meeting of the minds from everybody here
Right.
before we adopt those changes.
Right. Because we have to stop getting things at last minute. So this morning, we just here on the budget. Okay? Oh, budget. Go ahead and explain it.
Okay, so we're having the meeting on the budget.
Yes,
Adoption of the budget.
that's what was advertised.
Okay.
That public knows that.
Just to meet with the team, I guess, after, from a budget perspective, to make sure it's here. So good morning, council members. I am Carmen Gandula, I'm Director of Finance for the City of Jersey City, here to present this year's 2023 budget adoption. Here with me today are members from the Business Administrator's Office, Law Department, our acting CFO, and also our budget consultants that helped us develop this budget for this year. Included in your packets today is the 2023 Budget Action Plan. The document that you have before you is nothing that you have not seen. Many of you have worked with me in community development, where we developed action plans at the federal level. What I did this year is I took a lot of the work that Director Graves did, our budget consultant, and put it in a consolidated report for you. I think throughout our budget hearings this year, I heard a lot more about budget communication, budget transparency, what are the actions and deliverables that need to happen. And so what you have here before you today, Council President, is a summary of everything that we presented. Nothing here is really new. It is in draft form. After we adopt the budget, I will email you all this document so that you have it for your records. And then Council President, subsequently, after we adopt this budget, we'll continue with our budget committee hearings. I think that we discussed whether it be in August or September. So with that being said, I will turn it over to Mr. Graves to talk about the resolution that you have here before you, specifically regarding the budget and any additional questions that you may have regarding this year's budget development.
Good morning, council members. So last meeting, we had our public hearing on the budget amendments, and we kind of discussed everything in detail up to that point. So, I mean, honestly, I would just defer to the council if they have any additional questions. If something wasn't clear during the budget presentations or the public hearings that we held, if there's a need for additional clarity now before a vote is taken.
Do anybody want to talk about the overtime? I know that was a discussion. How are we dealing with that, with the police department and different divisions? I know we was trying to control it. So where are we with the overtime and with this budget?
We provided a report to the council at the end of the month for halfway through the year. Overall, we are projecting to have a savings at the end of the year in overall salaries and wages. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's not going to be any overruns in overtime.
Right.
But, we're continuously monitoring that. We're working with the business administrator's office on having quarterly meetings with directors to bring them in to review overtime expenditures and to identify any negative trends to kind of put a game plan together through the rest of the year. There weren't any major amendments to overtime budgets in what was circulated. So, like I said, we're just continuing to monitor that. We do feel at the end of the year we'll have a surplus. And if there's any need for appropriation transfers, of course, that'll come to council in either November or December. And there'll be preliminary meetings before that. And we can continue to discuss these items in our quarterly committee meetings.
Questions? More questions?
I just wanted to record Councilperson Rivera present at 10:26 a.m. So we now have 7 council members present at 10:26. So council members, the sole purpose of this meeting was to approve a resolution to adopt the calendar year 2023 municipal budget, which is resolution 23-557. We have any questions before we take the vote?
And let me ask, when it came to employees increase, is that reflected in this new budget and different positions? Remember, with certain departments, we talked about that they, they can hire because it was necessary, like people were missing. Is that included, like all that we discussed?
Not every,
Okay,
not every recommendation that we fielded was funded. What we did was, after all of the budget hearings were concluded, we went back and, we made additions to the budget, factored in all the requests from the council, department directors, even finance's own recommendations. And, we determined that all of those requests would ultimately result in additional tax increase. So we had to back out any additional requests that were discussed. They were detailed in the budget amendment public hearing, and there was nothing major. So we're continuing to proceed with the 2% levy increase. Any personnel changes that haven't taken place to this point are not included in the budget. We didn't cut any originally funded hires or new positions. So anything that was introduced in the original budget, as far as a new position or potentially mostly vacant positions, they are, I would say majority are still funded, but there was no major changes to staffing levels.
okay.
There a tax increase for the school district as well? I mean, it seems like there was.
Yes, and I believe we distributed that information, and
Yeah.
I would just recommend that the council members, if you want additional clarity on that, to talk to the tax assessor and the tax collector on how the billing is spread out. I know they're on a fiscal year, so it doesn't necessarily tie to our calendar year budget, but the way the billing works for us is on a calendar year, and there is a tax increase.
County too, right? County increased? Yeah.
The county based on the information I got recently, the county levy amount is up, but seems to be a tax decrease just based on, as taxable base grows. But I'll confirm that number for the council. It didn't impact our budget, and the information was just recently shared with us. So I'll have to get back and confirm that.
Okay.
Cal, if you could, because I see in this budget, it's a 2% increase, but we've seen, an increase in taxes from the second quarter to the third quarter. If you could just speak a little on that, just so the public is aware
Yep.
of what transpired there.
Yep. So the first 2 quarter tax bills are based on last year, and then the third quarter was an estimated bill. So we can estimate up to 105% of, I believe, last year's tax levy. So with the knowledge that we would have a 2% tax increase, and there was still uncertainty on what the Board of Ed and county was going to be, we did an estimated bill for, I defer to John Mercer after this, but I believe we billed up to the max that we could. And then in the fourth quarter, any adjustments would be made to the tax bills, whether a property owner has overpaid or underpaid, would be an adjustment in the fourth quarter. Yeah, so the third quarter was just an estimated bill until a levy was certified.
Also, I guess with regards to the overtime, if we can see, like who's the overtime going to? Like, is it the higher ups in the police department? Is it for regular officers? And the reason why I asked that is because that way we can get a better assessment of how the police are being deployed, and I guess see a justification for why the overtime is necessary. Because in some cases, it may very well be necessary, but in other cases, we might look at it and say, well, why do we have so many, I don't know, deputy chiefs or lieutenants doing overtime and they're not on foot patrol? So if we can just have
Breakdown.
just a breakdown and just like some justifications on why is it necessary. Because I know as a council, people just, y'all just giving away money, y'all just giving away money. And then I know for me, a lot of times I don't have a complete explanation as to why we spent so much overtime. But like I said, in some cases, especially in my ward, I understand the need for overtime to be given to officers. So we can have a breakdown of that.
Yes, so the Department of Finance makes the annual appropriation to each department, and by division, typically we scale it to the prior year. This year, our goal was to reduce overtime by 15% across all departments.
50 or 50?
15. So in our original budget hearings with department directors, that was what was presented and that's what was discussed. Additional details regarding how they're utilizing that overtime, you'd have to get from the department director. No, the authorizations don't come through our office. We strictly set the budget, monitor, and advise on the direction in which they're going with their spending. So you would need to discuss that with Director Shea or the police division specifically on how they're deploying their staff.
Questions?
I have a question. So how's the city budget performing from last year versus this year? Has there been any changes?
Yes, so the only major change in this year's budget is the reduction of any federal aid as far as the American Rescue Plan. So that was a big chunk of revenue that the city was using to, replace lost revenue from prior years and cover any additional efforts, from the pandemic to mitigate impact from the pandemic. But again, it's a 2% levy increase. Most of our operations, we did a good job of keeping them flat, and we had some additional, statutory requirements that we had to meet, like healthcare increases, pension increases, and our carried out cash deficit from 2021. So those are the only major items in this year's budget in comparison to last year.
So is it a better improvement?
As far as like year-end operations, yeah. So we were able to regenerate a significant cash surplus, which is reflected in this year's budget to help mitigate some of those additional costs that we have. And we also saw a very large increase in our property valuation, which helped alleviate some of the impact on the tax levy. So we increased our valuation, as we discussed, $3 billion from October 2021 to October 2022, which we were able to utilize in this year's tax base.
And Councilmember Rivera, I will say before you got here, I prepared a budget action plan this year, similar to what I did in community development. And in section, I would say page 6 of the report is what's titled the budget action plan and results. And you'll see that we took 12 steps this past year to really hone in developing this year's budget. And in the section of this report, it just talks about like where we started out with our issues, how we got there, and the steps we got to delivering this year's budget. And so I do think what Director Graves is indicating is that the budget is ever changing and it's being monitored a little bit more effectively and better from last year to this year. I think no one ever wants to adopt in October, but we're here in July. And I have aggressively been managing this a little bit better for this year so that come next year, I already told Kyle, we're going to try for January. And all that's contingent on our audit, all that's contingent on other things, but I'm happy to report when we do next month's budget committee hearings that we talk about the status of our audit, our financials, where the city is, and then getting to September to December and going out this year a little bit more quickly so we can start developing 2024's budget. So I think from last year to this year, a significant improvement in management and hoping to continue those discussions with the council for the remainder of the year.
This is on, this year's budget, 701, right?
Yep, correct.
And last year was 750.
Yes, so there were additional grant dollars last year, which is why the budget was a lot higher last year. There was at 49, I believe $49 million in federal funding. I don't have the exact detail, but a lot of times our budget fluctuates depending on the time we adopt the budget. If we adopted the budget in February or March, it would have been much less, just contingent on the time that we receive additional grant dollars. So that's the only reason there's a major change.
And
last year.
all of the departments had 15% decreases, correct?
In overtime. So we did make reductions in all departments from, we started off with 15%. Some areas it wasn't feasible because some offices are staff heavy.
Mhm.
The majority of their costs are in salaries and wages. And of course, we didn't do any layoffs or furloughs or anything like that. So there were some areas where we couldn't meet that 15% cut. But along the line in our budget process, there was, additional changes where we had, a FEMA reimbursement for $4 million. We certified that what the tax base was going to be. So there were some additional revenues that we didn't have to meet that 15% cut in every area, but that was what we strive for. And you'll see that in our action plan.
But most of the departments were able to adhere to the 15%.
No, but we made every effort to, make sure that we covered all of our statutory obligations without impacting any workforce levels. So we really just focused on cutting our discretionary items like overtime and, maybe some reductions to part-time hours in some areas, but that wouldn't really yield much. So the majority of our cuts were in overtime and shifting funding from our annual budget to our capital plan. We have permissible uses of capital funding for a vast majority of projects and, general building improvements, park improvements. So if we had contracts existing within the departments that applied to that purpose, we leverage those capital dollars to alleviate the impact on the budget. And we're going to be including those costs moving forward in our capital plan. So our VIA program and our contract with VIA, move that to our capital budget. Any on-call services for infrastructure, we moved to our capital budget. Park improvements, things like that is, where we didn't cut costs, but we moved it off of our annual budget. So it's more sustainable going forward.
So out of the, I don't know, 12, 13 departments, would you say 4 of them met the 15% threshold?
I don't want to say off the top of my head, but I could give everyone a summary when we wrap this up, but there were reductions in all departments.
Councilman, I would also want to clarify that when we did put out the ask in December of last year for the departments to prepare their budgets, there was a memorandum issued by me asking for this aggressive cut. Historically, the city only cuts like 7, 8, 10%. But considering the times that we were just in and trying to prepare this year's budget, some things were not realistic in doing so. If we, like Kyle said, if we were to cut certain departments that were very staff heavy, then we would be looking at furloughs, layoffs, some of those things that historically in the times of COVID, like we just didn't do. The alternative that we did was we did a voluntary buyout, right? We asked people to see if they wanted to separate, retire from the city and yield some cost savings. So in the 12 steps that took to develop this year's budget, we outlined, okay, we're looking at staffing costs. We were looking at other revenues to be generated. What were some of the game plans to get us here? And when we realized that you weren't going to develop this budget just by cutting, there was other mechanisms that had to develop those steps. We couldn't realistically get everyone to 15%, but there were some areas that got to 12, 13, 14, a little bit above that threshold.
Just for the record, how much did our healthcare increase? What percentage? Because I know healthcare went up across the whole country. So how much? I just want the public to know how much healthcare increase. Some of them will not get this report, but if they don't.
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Because we had a lot of increases just as a city itself. And so sometimes it's good for the public to know exactly what increased on our end so they can understand why our budget is the way it is.
Yeah, so we had about a 10% increase in our annual appropriation. So this year's appropriation is 114 million. The overall projected cost though is 146 million. And what we did is we did increase our employee contributions by 5% to help mitigate the impact on the budget. But it's not enough to cover, what we're projecting for the year. We are self-insured, so that can vary. In our case, over the last few years, the trend has been upward rather than the other direction, and it hasn't been stable. So the increase in the annual appropriation was kind of unavoidable. And, if there is a surplus at the end of the year, that is the goal. We don't want to underfund our health insurance.
Mhm.
Prior years, we had some overruns where we just simply couldn't keep up with the volume of claims and the amounts in which they were coming. And we get our budget proposal from an actuary prior to the year. And, we use that and we implement it into our budget. But again, that could vary throughout the year. And it's kind of hard to game plan for excess claims above what's in their original projection. So but it is a big impact on this year's budget.
Mhm.
And hopefully in future years, we start to see that come down a bit, but we want to make sure it's 100% funded where we don't have to come to the council at the end of the year for
Mhm.
additional funding.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay,
John, just
yes.
one more question, just with respect to the police overtime, right? Is there any way, my question is concerning civil service, right? Is Jersey City like on pace with competing as far as salary, for our police officers? And the reason why I say that, a lot of the overtime that we get is because we need to kind of like fill in the gaps, and, some officers, it's not a secret, they're like a little upset, that their, pay is not doing too good. And we're seeing a lot of officers transfer out. So, um, is there any way to maybe increase, that monetary on these police officers so that they could like entice them to stay, or is that just factored in, based on civil service titles?
So their salaries are negotiated in their union contracts, and we budget whatever that that bargaining agreement dictates. So that's a conversation that
Via unions, correct?
then is, yeah.
Are there any other questions? All right, council members, I'm going to be taking a vote on resolution 23-557. Councilperson Ridley,
Aye.
Councilperson Prinzary, Councilperson Saleh.
I think that this budget is a significant improvement over, the last year. And I know we had to do a moderate tax increase, which amounts to only $73. It's 2%. This is $73 for the calendar year. I said last year, though, that if I had to vote for a tax increase this year, that I would have to vote no. So I'm gonna vote no. That's not to say that this is not a good budget. It's significantly better. And there are things out of our control, like the school budget, which has seen consistent tax increases, and we need one tax strategy for the whole city. And I find this budget to be a lot more responsible than anything I've seen from anywhere else. And I know we had 7 years of no tax increases, but I made a commitment to my constituents. Thank you.
Councilperson Solomon,
I'm going to vote no. I think there's been many decisions that have led us up to this point, but ultimately there is too much of a burden on working families in this budget. And that's why I'm voting no.
Councilperson Gilmore,
I'm gonna vote no. I will acknowledge that it is, carefully planned. It is more physically responsible, but ultimately, the regular homeowners and the taxpayers are being nickeled and dime, and the taxes are relatively going up, and the cost of life for these families and individuals is relatively stable. So it puts them at a disadvantage. So in light of all that, I'll vote no.
Councilperson Rivera,
So this is why I asked the question, what was the difference between, last year and this year, and has there been any improvements? And there has been, and your work clearly shows that you guys have been, drilling on this, and it's doesn't taste good, sometimes, and it's not healthy to agree with everybody, so but I think that you guys, have, like I said, have shown that you guys have been working on it, and the numbers have shown. I vote aye.
Council President Waterman.
When it comes to the budget, it's always a challenging thing for this city. I know the finance department had new leadership within the last 2 years. It's moving in the right direction. It really is. I am going to vote yes on this budget. I don't know what happens after this because I know it was a percentage, but the public needs to know at this point what happens. If it doesn't pass or if it passes. Because they need to understand it.
So, Council President, you voted yes?
Yes.
Okay, just to recap. Yep. So, Resolution 23-557 is defeated 4-3, even though it has affirmative vote of 4 council members in the affirmative and 3 voting no is Councilperson Saleh, Solomon, and Gilmore.
Correct.
Council members Bajiano and DeGise are absent.
Right.
This resolution requires majority of the full membership, which is 6 votes.
Okay. So since we can't pass our budget, now what's the next move?
This is just a resolution to adopt, so.
Okay.
I'm really not certain because obviously this hasn't happened.
Right. There's people back.
Our advisors here.
These guys can speak. I mean, we have everybody here.
Morning.
Good morning.
If you can just identify yourself for the record and spell your name for my court reporter, I greatly appreciate it.
Sure. Stephen, Wielkotz, from Wilcox and Company, for your city's consultants.
Could you come this way? Because we really can't see you over. Behind. Yes, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Used to having my own mic. So by the resolution failing,
Mm-hmm.
one option is to continue to bring it up meeting after meeting until it passes.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the state has already sent out letters
Okay.
to municipalities that haven't yet introduced their budgets, giving them kind of it's the end of July, time is of the essence. My suggestion would be that the finance department contact at the Division of Local Government Services
Mhm.
and advise them that it's been voted on twice,
Mm-hmm.
it's failed twice.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's voted on
It
once.
voted on last time, sorry.
It didn't get voted on last meeting because there was council members that were out.
Correct.
So we had 3 council members that were absent.
We can't hear you, Carmen.
I said the Department of Finance was ready to introduce the budget in the last meeting. Unfortunately, there was 3 council members that were out. So therefore, I asked the council president for a special meeting so that we would have full attendance for this meeting to adopt the city's budget. So
So, and again, I believe that the statute on the budget adoption I believe the statute says it's a simple majority of the full governing body, which I believe is 5 votes. You have 9 members.
Peter?
Regardless, we've got 4.
Right, no, I understand.
Yeah.
It's also, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is when you amend the budget to increase any line item that requires additional to the 6 votes that the clerk made up, but I defer to the law department on analyzing it.
The budget amendment was voted on and introduced, and that did pass. This resolution is adopting about the budget entirely. So, and the local budget law does read a majority of the full membership of the council. It doesn't say 2/3. Again,
Right.
it's irrelevant today, and we'll confirm that prior to the next time this resolution is brought back to the council. If there are additional amendments requested by council or the administration, it may trigger another public hearing and may further delay the process, but it's not finance's intention to bring back another budget amendment, considering, the work we did with the state already to get to this point and to get the approval from the state weeks ago to proceed with the adoption of the budget that the council has in front of them today. So,
You go lower, Carl. We can't hear you.
yeah, so like I said, so
Somebody
Say
just
that as far-
stay clear. We can't hear. Your voice goes lower.
it's fine. So resolution will come back to council to adopt the budget as is, unless there's additional changes to the already approved amendment by the state. If
Okay.
there are certain triggers in that amendment, it would require another public hearing, and then we'd have to follow up with another resolution to adopt those changes. And I said, that's not the finance department's, goal here. We're going to proceed with the amendments that we have,
Okay.
considering the work we did with the state to get to this point and get their approval. The 2% levy increase at the beginning of the year seemed very unattainable for us, considering
Mhm.
the prior year results and all the work we did with the audit, the work we did with Wilcox to get to stable financials for this year's budget and moving forward. We presented that plan to the council in May. So
Mhm.
if there were requests for us to eliminate any tax burden on residents, it would have resulted in layoffs of employees,
Correct.
reduction of services,
Mhm.
and a plethora of items that we did not have the intent to cut, neither did the business administrator. And obviously, it's not the administration's goal to cut any services for any residents. So this budget, I think, is very fiscally responsible.
So if it don't pass, then we're gonna have to cut and lay off employees.
If-
That's what it'll come to.
If the council doesn't want any tax burden, I mean, that is one thing we're going to have to consider. It was very hard to get to this,
Okay,
considering our,
because I want the
Statutory
public to
requirements.
understand this, because I know they're watching. I want them to understand it. So then if the problem is why the other council people didn't vote because of the increase, because that's the issue based on what some said. They can all speak for themselves. But if it's because of the 2% increase, all right, if that is removed, then we have to lay off people, right? I'm just want to be clear here. We have to lay off people. We have to cut services.
Correct.
It's good for the public to know what we have to do if we have to do it. That's what I'm just saying.
Correct, Council President. And as Director Graves indicated, we started this process early on.
Correct.
Indicated to everyone on the council that this budget was prepared in considered with our budget consultant and with the state ahead of time. I changed the process so that you guys could actually vote on actual amendments to get to this point. Today is the adoption of the budget.
So we just want to be clear, Director Gandula, that it's important that we say that on the record because we also have city employees that are constituents of this city, and we just need to be clear, and it's on the record, that there is a strong possibility that we are going to have layoffs in this city.
Yes.
Correct. And if amendments needed to
Thank
be
you.
presented to the Department of Finance, it should have been ahead of last week's meeting or the meeting before that, or the
Correct.
meeting before that. So
agree.
without getting actual written documentation from the council on substantial amendments of these amendments to the adoption of this budget is just unfair, considering the much improved budget that we did this year.
I understand. I hear your frustration because I know you met with us. You tried to work with us. I know certain council people
Council
reached
President,
out.
sorry, this just seems to be like the no after the transparency that I gave,
Yes.
the details that I gave. Absolutely not. It's not fair to the constituents. It's not fair to anyone in this room.
I apologize. I just need to jump in here. first, I think the most important thing is the city and the people of the city who have experienced, massive tax increases. I'm only going to speak for myself. I voted against every step of the process. So it's not fair to engage in sort of very large, rhetoric, which is not reflective of the fact that, again, I'm speaking for myself, we've had a clear record of having serious concerns about the budget. And while we appreciate there's been a lot of work in a significantly improved process, it does not change decisions that have been made for multiple years that got us to this place, and that puts a significant undue burden on the constituents. And I think the most productive thing would not be to have a back and forth between the administration and the council, but to figure out the plan moving forward. And if the plan of the administration is to simply bring this back when the full body is here, that's the administration's plan. We're not fighting here. Just let us know that that's your plan, and that's what we'll do.
The plan was for,
Or if the plan is to have amendments, then we'll work on that together.
the plan was for today's adoption. This is why I went to the council president and asked for a meeting. I don't control the council and the attendance here, but I do control the documents that were submitted to you. And yes, this budget, again, was in preparation with the state's approval ahead of it, right? This is probably one of the first time in a long time that we reverted this dialogue so that you guys could make clear, concise votes. But the economy, the economics of the country and the impacts of COVID is what we're living with.
And I just want to be clear, and I think that I sense how this can be frustrating because you was asked to be as transparent as possible and to dissect this budget as much as possible to present it for us. And, here it is. But, I guess, it is what it is, it's unfortunate, but we just have to move forward.
So I have a question. I know that last year we passed the budget a lot later and we were talking about fees. When exactly do those fees kick in for us not passing the budget? And are there any associated fees at this time?
So what I was going to interject before you made your comment is that if this continues to go on this way, the state has the ability and the right to step in and set the budget for you. And say, city, this is your budget for 2023. It could be what was voted down today. It could be something different, but they have the right. If you can't pass a budget, and I don't know how many people were around about 15 or 16 years ago when they did that to Hoboken. The council couldn't agree on a budget. They came in, and unfortunately at that time, they doubled the tax levy because that's what the city needed
Right.
in order to have a correct balanced budget. So they have the ability to do that. Not that they want to do it, but they do have the ability. The other thing I just want to put on the record is that the state cut the city of Jersey City a huge break earlier this year through discussions with this team, with the director, in allowing you to go forward and pass the COVID-19 special emergency earlier this year to fund the balance of 21 deficit that was a product of COVID. So and again, this is just my professional opinion from my 44 years of experience doing this, is that they've already cut the city a break and allowed you to raise the balance of that deficit over 4 years. So which is part of how we got to having the additional surplus to use in this budget to deal with some of the things that happened in 2020 and 2021. And miraculously, because as Kyle said, he and I sat down earlier this year and the tax increase was over 10%. And through closing out 22, through going through the budget process, through the painstaking activities of meeting department by department, and going through the budgets with all the other directors, they got to 2%. And quite frankly, with health benefits going up over 10, I don't know, pensions went up a lot. Inflation is up a lot. I do a lot of budgets across the state for a lot of municipalities and counties. And 2% is not this year, 2023, 2% is the exception. So again, I just put that on the record.
All right.
Council members, I just want to clarify. So the majority of the full membership is 5 votes, not 6. 6 is 2/3. So the resolution still fails because
Right.
we only have 4 votes in the affirmative. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn at 11:02
Motion.
p.m.?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilperson Rivera, seconded by Councilperson Ridley. On the motion to adjourn at 11:02 a.m., Councilperson Ridley, Councilperson Prinzary, Councilperson Saleh.
Aye.
Councilperson Solomon,
Aye.
Councilperson Gilmore, Councilperson Rivera, and Council President Waterman.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0 to adjourn at 11:02 a.m. Thank you so much, everyone present and everyone watching at home. Remember, teamwork makes the dream work. Have a great rest of the day.